As I said, today's session is about how long your data actually stays on the Mozy servers. For those of you who haven't joined before, my own name is Niall Fahy. I look after the internal and external training for Mozy's support organization and some of the sales teams as well. So the breakdown for the webinar basically will go along the lines of I'll do this brief presentation. We will go through the slide deck for probably between 15 and 20 minutes, at which point I will then break for questions that you have related to today's topic. Obviously, I will look at answering any questions that are related to today's topic first and foremost. If I can't give you a direct answer here and now, I'll point that out and I will follow up with you outside of the session. And so that will give us probably about 35 minutes for Q&A. And depending on how that goes, if we have less questions than we perceive, then we will obviously finish up the session as soon as we can for you. I would ask as well for any feedback that you may have on the session. You will have my email address from when I emailed out the invitation, or if you signed up on the newsletter, you should still get, when you registered, you should still have received my email address. It is just niallf@mozy.com if you don't have it. And we would ask for any feedback on the session and any requests for potential sessions you would like to see in the future. We run our Mozy support webinars once a month, usually the last Wednesday of each month, just to try and keep it as formalized as possible. But we are interested in hearing about the types of topics that you would like to hear about, obviously, as well. So the learning outcomes for today is that at the end of this session, you will be able to identify how long your files stay on our servers. You should be able to understand the functionality that makes up enhanced data retention, and you should be able to assess the changes that have been made and their benefits to you. As I said, the session will last roughly between 15, 20, 25 minutes, and we will then open for Q&A to the remaining kind of 35 minutes or so that we will have left in the hour. So to give a brief overview, today's session is going to cover the following four main questions really today. So that is, does Mozy keep my files indefinitely? When does Mozy delete my files? And what changes have been made? And the final question then is, how does this benefit you, the individual user or company user, depending? So the first question there is, does Mozy keep my files indefinitely? And the straight up answer there is no, we don't. Okay, so Mozy is not an archival product. It's a disaster recovery tool. So you need to be running backups of your files on a continuous basis to keep your files safe. So if you have files selected for backup, they need to be continuously selected in order to stay on our servers. Some users will sometimes come to support and they ask, can it be done? Can Mozy keep my files indefinitely? Well, technically, it could be done in an extreme scenario. We would strongly advise against this, and I'll explain why. So theoretically, you could run a backup today, uninstall the software, and never run a backup again, and continue paying for the service. This would give you an indefinite backup of that particular day. Now, there's an issue here, and this is why we would advise against it, is that this is a single point in time backup. Most of your data changes on an ongoing basis. So a lot of your data would change on a regular basis, making that single point in time data out of date by the time you would actually need it. The other danger as well is that, if any of those files were corrupted when you were backing them up, maybe some of the files were corrupted when you backed them up, they would sit on our servers in that state until you requested the restore. So it's not advisable. It's not what you're paying Mozy for, and we would recommend against it. So we don't keep your files indefinitely. It's an ongoing process where you need to continuously back up your files. So to move to the second question on that list and that overview is, when does Mozy delete my files? So when do we actually remove those files off of our servers? So the first question here we want to look at is if you've deleted your account or the computer itself off of your Mozy account. So if you've deleted your account or the computer that you were using for backups, maybe you've moved to a different computer, your files will be marked for deletion and they'll be removed from our servers immediately. If you're cancelling or your account or you're deciding to delete a computer or a machine off of your account, we're assuming and we're making the judgment that you do no longer need those files, so we mark them for deletion and they're removed immediately. If you're running regular backups, then obviously that changes. If you've removed a file from your backup or you've deleted a file accidentally off your computer, then it gets marked for deletion, okay, on the Mozy servers. So we don't delete it straight away the way we would if you were to delete your account or delete the computer. If you remove a file from the backup or you delete a file off of your computer that was previously backed up, we mark it for deletion on the Mozy servers. And then this gets removed after your retention period. So as I say, what we're talking about here is your data retention period and how long Mozy retains our data. So that's the topic of today's discussion. And we're going to look at that now in more detail in the coming slides around what your retention period is depending on the type of account you have. And we will have users on here today from Mozy Home users, Mozy Pro, Mozy resellers, and Mozy Enterprise. So I'm going to call out any differences specifically for any of those types of users. So what changes have been made? Okay, so the enhanced data retention is a new process that Mozy has been implementing and working on over the last number of months. Enhanced data retention consists of 3 parts. That's version consolidation, extended retention, and adjustable data retention. So you may be wondering what each of these does. So version consolidation really is the core here. It's the foundation block that will enable us to do the extended retention and the adjustable data retention. So we're going to first focus on the version consolidation. So using version consolidation, what we're able to do is to retain your user data for longer by limiting the total number of versions we retain. So we're giving you a longer period of retention. And what we're doing then is we're reducing apologies, I believe there's an issue with my screen. Can everybody see the slides okay? Okay, great, thank you. Apologies. So what we've made, as I say, in terms of changes, the three features that are making up enhanced data retention are version consolidation, extended retention, and the adjustable data retention. So as I say, we're going to first focus on this version consolidation because this is the real foundation block and the core one to enable the others. So what we're doing with version consolidation is we're taking the user's data and we're increasing the length we can keep that, and how we're doing that is by reducing the number of versions we retain. So that's the user file. As the user's file gets older, we merge versions of those files in the cloud. Okay, and what that will do then for us is that it reduces the amount of files that it reduces the amount of files that we retain for you, but there's no data loss because all we're doing is reducing the number of restore points. So rather than you going into your restore window and seeing, daily restore options for the next the next 30 days, you will have, the next 60 days, you will have specific restore points for your depending on your type of account. We're going to look at that in more detail in a second, but basically that's what it's doing. It's taking the amount of versions that you have and it's just merging those to create an increased or reduced number of restore points that you can restore from. So what we're going to do is we're going to take those version merges and we're going to do it in a progressive manner. Okay, and what that means is that what we'll do is we'll merge versions frequently in the short term, so over the course of a couple of days or in a couple of hours and weeks, and then as we go further into the past, we reduce that. So again, it's just reducing the amount of versions that we store on our servers. So I'm going to look at a graphic here to explain this to you better, because sometimes it can be easier just to see something as well. So what you're seeing here on the screen, okay, is what was the previous file journey for a user. Okay, so a user previously would have backed up their Word document, it would have went to the Mozy cloud, and on our servers it would remain there as a version. So for home customers, pro customers, resellers, and enterprise, you used to have a retention period of, for home customers, it was 30 days. For pro customers, it was 60 days retention. And for reseller and enterprise, it was 90 days of retention. Okay. 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 So what we're seeing there previously is that you had 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days retention. Okay. So let's take the scenario where a user backs up their file on a continuous basis. Okay, so each day it's sent to the Mozy cloud. Okay, your data previously was retained, as I say, for 30, 60, or 90 days, giving the user the ability to go and back up 30 days, and so they could go back in time 30 days and restore a file from any of those days. Because we do automatic backups and we do that up to 12 times a day, a user could potentially have 12 different versions of a file for the previous 30 days. So if they went into their restore window, if they went into their restore window in the client, they have the option there to actually select the timed backup that they wish to restore. So if you go into the restore window that's on the software that's installed on your computer, you can open up right next to the calendar, you have a drop down for the actual time of the backup. And these are the different versions of that file. So running a backup over the course of 30 days, let's take a file, okay, and a file that changes every day. So we're running 12 backups a day, and my file changes for each backup. So I have actual 12 distinct changes each day. So I'm backing up the file 12 times a day. Over the course of 30 days, that gives us 360 versions for that single file. Okay, so that's 360 versions of that file, and that's potentially 360 changes to that file. No, currently not at the moment. The screen is not changing at the moment. Bear with me. So you have a scenario there in this previous view of our backup journey, whereby the file could be backed up at least 12, there could be 12 different versions of the file. So you could have up to 360 different versions of one particular Word document on our servers for your, let's say for a home customer, for their retention period of 30 days. Why is this relevant? Let's take the scenario where you need to restore a file. Okay, so when we restore a file, we need all those changes. When you backed up that file originally, okay, so you backed up your Word document and you had say, let's say 5 sentences in it. Each change that you made over the course of 30 days, so each one of those 360 days, only that change would have been backed up. So that change is submitted to our servers. So then what you have is you have your original file, which is your baseline, and then you have all these changes. Now, if you want to restore the file from, let's say, 20 days ago, to restore that file, we have to go into our database. As you see this little database on the screen here that I have, we'd have to go in and say, okay, I want to restore this version of the file. Then what would actually have to happen is that I would need to restore this version, and so forth, and all these versions back to the original file to actually restore and rebuild the file as it exists today. So that baseline is what I'm backing up initially. Sorry, now just want to address any questions that come in as they go. Yeah, so if you see the screen, if you can see the screen right now, what you should be seeing is a graphic of a computer, a cloud, and a database file. Okay, so I think we're having some technical issues again with my screen. Yeah, so sorry, yeah, that's exactly it. It's a PowerPoint image. Yeah, so I'm talking through that screen. Okay. So what you will be seeing there is a scenario if you wanted to restore files. Okay, bear with me. Sorry, I'm just making sure. Can people see my screen okay? Apologies. I do not know if for some reason today is not my day with GoToWebinar. Okay, so I haven't made any changes to the visual, so we're just looking at this. This is a static visual. I'm just talking through this visual, so just in case anybody is too worried, we're just looking at a static visual here. So what we're talking about, okay, so if I want to restore let's say this version of the file here, and say this is my first version. To restore this version of the file, if the changes had occurred, obviously if I was having the scenario here where I had 12 changes each day, then I would really need to restore all those versions to actually get today's version of the file. Because when I'm running a backup, remember, I'm only backing up the changes to the file. I back up the initial file once, and then I just back up the changes to that file. So there could be a lot of patches there, and a lot of actual, when we go to restore, is that our restore process then has to go throughout all of our data center and pull all these little bits of patches together and rebuild the file for you and return it to you. Okay, so it can lead to a large workload, and it also can lead to a lot of changes, or a lot of I suppose different versions that are on the back end. So what's proposed to do with the new policy, okay, is that we will be moving from, when you had for your Mozy Home, you had 30 days of retention. For Mozy Pro, you had 60 days of retention. And for Mozy Resellers and Enterprise, you had 90 days of retention. What we're doing with the new file journey and the new proposal is we're moving you to Mozy Home customers will now get 3 months of retention. Mozy Pro users will get 6 months of retention, and reseller and enterprise will get 12 months of retention. Okay, so what will happen with the new policy is that previously you would have backed up your file and you would have had just a continuous spell of, for your say, I'm going to use a Mozy Home customer for this example just because it's easier, because it's 30 days. What would have happened previously is that you would have had just 30 days of versions. You could restore at any point in that 30 days, and that could be up to 360 different versions. If you were running the scenario that we mentioned a while ago, where you were running 12 backups a day for 30 days, okay, you could have up to 360 different versions for that 30-day period. What we're doing with the new policy in this version consolidation is we're bringing that amount of versions down, okay? So what we're doing is, if we take a file that's been backed up for the last 30 days, and we're going to look backwards here, okay? So if you see the graphic on the screen now, you'll see inside in that little database picture that I have there, you'll see what I'm going to talk through here. So with the new policy, a file will have hourly versions available for restore for the first 3 days on our backend. So what you'll be able to do there from the in-client restore window is you will be able to go in for the first 3 days after that file was initially backed up. Okay, you will have the option to go in and use restore points from on an hourly basis. So if you were running, so for that 3-day period, you would be able to restore your full 12 backups that were run each day. You could select the individual version that was run. So if you were to run your backups 12 times a day, you would be able to go in and select any one of those particular versions. After that point, after the first 3 days, you will then have daily versions available for the next 31 days. So for the next 28 days to a total of 31 days, you would have daily versions available. That means, and the big thing there is what's changing is that previously you would have had restore points. You would have 300, potentially you would have had 360 different restore points. Now what you will have is you will have 30 days. You will have 30 restore points. So it's paring down all those additional versions that may not be a major thing to you, and we're giving you 30 daily versions. So rather than being able to go back in and restore each one of the 12 versions, you will now have 30 days of restores. Going on beyond that, then after 30 days, you will start getting weekly versions. So what we do is every depending on your time zone, it will be either Saturday night or Sunday morning, we will put a weekly marker on a file. Okay, and what will happen then is that you will have a weekly version of the file available. Okay, so you will have a weekly version. So for the first 30 days, you will have your daily versions. When you start getting further and further into the past, you will then, let's take a Mozy Pro customer, for example, who will have 6 months of retention now, or even a Mozy Home customer who have 3 months. So what will happen there is, if I have a file today, okay, and we're not talking about a Mozy Home customer here because it's going to be the same process. I have a file today that I've been backing up for the last number of months. If I go to restore that file, what I'll see when I go and open up the restore window is for the previous 30 days, I will have a daily version that I'll be able to restore. Going into months 2 and 3, throughout those months 2 and 3, I will have a weekly version that I can restore. Okay, so first 30 days back into the past, I will be able to restore a daily version each day. So I could pick one day in that 30-day period and restore from that point. When I go into months 2 and 3, I will have weekly versions. So what that means is that if I go 2 months into the past, I will have, for that 2 months into the past, I will have weekly versions available to me. So rather than having 7 daily versions, I'll have 1 weekly version. And the same then, once I go beyond 3 months and head between 3 months and a year, I will have monthly versions. Okay, so with the version consolidation, by consolidating and merging files, you're not losing any data, but what we're doing is we're just giving you less restore points. And by doing that, by giving less restore points, we're then able to increase the period that you can actually retain your data for. So there's a slight trade-off there. You're getting longer retention, but you're just getting fewer restore points. And now bear in mind that for a lot of, let's say, for example, the hourly restore options or the specific version of the file, you can only do that through the client restore anyway. You're not able to do that in the web version of the restore. So while there are fewer restore points as you go back into the past, you are also getting more restore points because you're able to restore further into the past now. So we're going to look at some of the benefits here. Okay, so how does it benefit you, the user? So you will get increased backup performance, you'll get increased restore speed, and then the obvious one that we've mentioned there once or twice is the increased retention and the ability to choose a retention policy. Okay, so in terms of increased backup performance, obviously by using version consolidation, it allows for us to have significantly smaller transactional databases, and by doing that, then it will speed up our backup processes. Okay, so then in terms of restore speed, as I mentioned, when you go to restore a file, and if you have multiple versions, so if we go back to the original example where we had the 360 different changes to the file, so we have 360 versions of that file. And if I want to go and restore that last version, that day 30, I'd have to restore all those changes as well. So our restore process would have to go out and fetch all those pieces and put them all together to create your file for restore. By reducing the points and merging the files as we go, it allows for faster restore, because if I go and I need to restore my daily version, then I just have that one version rather than having 12. If I need to go 2 months into the past and I need to restore a weekly version, it's already merged for me and the file is ready. It's a lot quicker. Rather than having to go search for hundreds of different change files, I can just grab the main file itself and the couple of data points that make up that file. Okay, and then the other two key features that this version consolidation will allow is what we're going to look at in a second as well, but it'll allow us to implement extended retention. Okay, it allows us to extend the reliability of our backup process out to longer retention times for you, the user. It enables us to, as well, to offer adjustable data retention across a useful range. So that's the other feature that's going to come. We mentioned it earlier, adjustable data retention. This will allow you, the individual, and this is for pro, reseller, and enterprise customers only. This adjustable data retention feature that will allow you to set a defined retention policy that can go up to as high as 7 years. Okay, so what changes have been made in terms of the extended retention? So our version consolidation is what it's doing there is it's merging file versions so that we have less restore points the further we go into the past. But the advantage of having that by doing that merging that we're doing with version consolidation, it gives us this option here, which is the extended retention. Okay, so once it's enabled, and you can see the retention periods here on screen, is that our default retention periods will go from, for home customers, their retention period goes from 30 days to 90 days. So it goes from 1 month to 3 months. So where previously, if you needed to restore a file, you could only go back 30 days and restore a file, you can now go back 90 days and restore a file. If you're a pro customer, it's increasing from 60 days, 2 months, right out to 184 days, which is 6 months. So that's 4 additional months that you would be able to go back into the past and restore a particular file from. The final one then for enterprise and reseller customers is that they're increasing from 90 days right out to a year. So you're getting 366 days. It goes in 366 days. It's a year and a day, I suppose. But you're getting that additional period that you can go back in time to actually restore from. And I think we can all agree that's a significant increase by doing this process. By using version consolidation, we're able to give you, the end user, a lot more access to files further into the past. And you may think, well, I had 30 days, I would have had more versions of the file with the way things were done previously. But the thing we see, and we see it from a support perspective, is that generally people, when they're restoring, they don't really need, if they need to restore a file from 2 or 3 months ago, they're not necessarily concerned with the exact, it has to be the version of the file from 5/22 on this date 2 months ago. They're more interested in a point of time, and okay, well, I need that file from that week, and that's what I need. Okay, so we're doing that by I say, implementing version consolidation pushes out the extended retention. Finally, for pro, enterprise, and reseller users, we're also implementing a feature which is adjustable data retention. Okay, so what this does is that once obviously the version consolidation is enabled, and we have the ability then to implement, once the version consolidation is implemented, we have the ability then to extend your retention. But what this allows you, for those specific users that I called out, it allows you to go to the admin console. So in the admin console, you'll have a new section in there, and it'll be entitled Data Retention. Okay, and that allows you to set a retention policy at the partner level or at a user group level. And that goes then from, you can have a minimum retention of 7 days right out to a maximum retention of 7 years. So you'd have seen there previously, these are the default options, okay? But with adjustable data retention for pro, reseller, and enterprise users, you will have the ability to control whether you want to write down to a minimum retention period of 7 days up to a maximum retention period of 7 years. Okay, so that is quite a large increase in terms of the distance that you can go back into the past to restore a particular file. This can be changed at any time by selecting from a pre-configured list of policies that we have within the admin console. And admins then themselves can control sub-administrators' access to retention management, which via a new retention policy management capability. So if you only want to control, as the root administrator, you want to be the only one to control the adjustable data retention, then you can do that by limiting sub-administrators' access to that. So that is a big benefit. Just as you saw, with the home, pro, and enterprise and reseller, as you go further into the past, you have, we had the daily ones for the first week, or for the first 30 days, you have a daily version. For the first 3 months, then you have access to weekly versions. From 3 months to a year, you have monthly versions as well that you can restore. Okay. When you go over the 1 year period, we start creating quarterly versions. So from year 1 to 7, if you were to say go to the maximum retention period, 7 years, if you were to go back in time 2 years ago, you start seeing quarterly versions. So for each year after the first year, you will get 4 versions of that particular file for each year. So again, it's reducing the amount of restore points, but it's pushing out the time that you can actually restore to a greater degree. So to recap on what we've been talking about here, is to really, I suppose, to highlight the features and functionalities and how long your data will remain on our servers. Okay, first things first, obviously, if you delete your account or you delete a computer off an account, those files are marked for deletion for removal immediately. But if you're going into an ongoing process where you're backing up your files on an ongoing basis, then we're going to be talking about the enhanced data retention. So that was the version consolidation that we mentioned first, whereby we're merging versions to create fewer restore points as we go further into the past. That in itself then enables the next two features, which is an extended retention, which we saw for all users. So to recap on that, home users will go from having 30 days versions of files on our servers to having 90 days. Pro customers will go from having 60 days to 6 months. And reseller and enterprise users will go from having 90 days right out to a year. And both pro, enterprise, and resellers will then also have the ability to use adjustable data retention, whereby they can choose a restore policy for their entire partner or on a per user group basis, and they can choose between a minimum of 7 days right up to a maximum of 7 years. So there's that advantage with the adjustable data retention. Some of the gains that you'll see here on screen: you gain extended retention, improve restore experience, because as we say, with the less versions to actually have to pull all together to create the file, it speeds up our restore process. You have for the pro, reseller, and enterprise users, you have the ability from the adjustable retention to go from either 7 days right out to 7 years. And the biggest one here really is that this is all at no additional cost. So this doesn't cost you anything. This is, as previously, as was always the case with our retention, we never charge users for the retention or the different versions of their files that are on our servers. So if your backup client says you're backing up 10 gigabytes, you're only paying for 10 gigabytes. Even if all the versions on our backend add up to 40 gigabytes, it doesn't matter. You're paying for what you see on your client being used. So this is all these gains that you're getting here are come at no additional cost. What is the impact to you? Okay, so the biggest thing here is that you'll need to upgrade to the latest version of the Mozy software. Okay, these are version consolidation enabled clients. So you need to have all your active users updated to that. Okay, and for you, for Mozy Pro, Enterprise, and reseller users as well, we'd ask you to reach out to ourselves so that we can enable a new root administrator role on your account so that you can see the options. So this is an opt-in for those Mozy Pro, Enterprise, and reseller customers currently. It is opt-in. Further down the line, obviously, we'll be pushing out this to everybody, but at the moment, it's still in an opt-in phase. So if you want to reach out to us, we can enable it for you. All we need from your end is that you make sure that all the users that are backing up on your account are upgraded to the latest versions of the client. For Mozy Home customers, you will automatically be pushed over to this as long as you're updated to the latest version of the software. And the other impact then to yourselves as users is that obviously we don't retain every version across the retention period as we previously did. So as I mentioned with that example we had a while ago, you went from having, for a home customer that's backing up the same file 12 times a day for 30 days, they had 360 different versions that they could have gone in from their client that was installed on their machine, and going to the restore window there, they had the option to go in and select any version over that last 30 days. So they would have had 360 different options to choose from to restore that file. Whereas now they will have 30 different options. Okay. Now, so just to go back over what we had set out to do. Okay, so we set out to identify how long your files stay in our servers. We set out to understand the functionality that makes up enhanced data retention. So that was our version consolidation, extended retention, adjustable data retention, and assess the changes that have been made and their benefit to you. I believe we've probably achieved those goals for this session, but I'm happy now to turn the time over to you to have any questions. I know we ran a bit longer, but I do have one or two questions already submitted, so I'm going to start answering those, and please feel free to send in more questions as you go. Okay, so Brad has a question here. No, so if you were to restore for a month ago, that wouldn't matter, Brad. So Brad's question, in terms of restoring a month ago, you would need to restore the 28 days and then the 24 hourly items from the first 3 days. No. What would happen there is if you wanted to go back 30 days ago, you would just select that version of the file, and it would build that restore for you and make available. What I'm talking about there when I say we have hourly versions is that if you were to look at, okay, so if I've been backing up a file for the last number of days, if I look back over the last, so for the next, so I've been backing up a file and I look at the restore window. For the first 3 days after that file has been backed up, I may have to actually go in and select the hourly versions and restore those. So if I want to, I could select one of those hourly versions and restore those. After that 3-day period, what happens is that those versions, all those daily versions get consolidated, or those hourly versions get consolidated into a daily version. And that just means that if in 5 days' time I want to restore the version of the file from today, I would only see a daily version available to me. I would no longer see those hourly versions available. Does that make sense? Let me know if it doesn't, and I can come back. So yeah, so another great question, Brad. Even if you pick a 7-year ADR, you get monthly for the first year. Exactly. So for the first year, you would have monthly versions available, and then after that point, then, so for year 2, 3, 4, and 5, as you go back further into the past. So let's say we're sitting here today, and I've been backing up a file for the last number of years, and we're sitting here today looking at that file. Now, if I open up the restore window and I look at that file and I go back through the calendar, for the last year, okay, so the last 30 days of that file being backed up, I'd have daily versions. For the last 3 months, I would have weekly versions. And then from 3 months to the year back in time, I'd have monthly versions. Then once I step back further than that, so into years 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, I would have quarterly versions available to me to restore. Does that make sense? And just let me know if it does, and if it doesn't, we can readdress that. So are there any other questions? Okay. So, Brad, you can reach out to support or to your sales rep, whichever you're more comfortable with. But that can be enabled as of now. Again, all we would ask for your partner, all we'd ask for your partner is that you would update to the latest version of the software. That is a version consolidation enabled client. Because obviously there's changes that we need to make to the client in terms of how it communicates with our backend to identify version consolidation, so that we can actually enable version consolidation on the back end of your account as well. So the latest version of the software will actually be going out. It'll be released, I believe, today. So it's two. I don't have the exact, Jared, I don't have the exact version of the client, but what I'll do is when I send on the recording of today's session, I'll include it in my email to everybody who's on today's session. Is that okay? Great. Okay. Sorry, I'm just reading a quick question there. So if you are going and to restore 30 days, if you're going back, if you're going from today and you're looking back at a file 30 days ago, Brad, and you want to restore that file, you just restore that file. Okay. We do all, like, if there's pieces to be pulled together to create that version of the file, that's done in the backend. For you, it's a simple, straightforward process. You go in and you just select your date that you want. I suppose maybe I got a bit too deep there. I was just trying to give you an idea of how the process works. But if you need to restore a file that was 30 days ago, you just go into the calendar, you select that file, and you restore it. And we build it for you in the backend and make it available for you. So it's one simple, straightforward operation. If you go through the software and you want to do a restore, the in-client restore option does give you the added advantage of being able to select a particular version of the file. So if you are on, if you have your software open in the restore window right now on your computer, if you go to the restore window, you can select by date, and if you right next to the calendar in the in-client restore, there's a little drop down, and it shows you the hourly or the different versions that are available to you. Okay, and you can restore one of those. But again, it's the same process. If you choose one of those options, we will get everything together for you and present you with the file ready to actually download. So there's no work required from you except just to select the actual version that you want to restore. Yeah. Oh, and I understand, Brad. Yeah. So that's. I mean, what happens? So if we're talking to understanding what actually happens in the backup process, it's okay. So when we back up a file from you off your server or your desktop computer, when that file is backed up to us, it doesn't actually exist as a like, I mean, we don't take that file and just drop it into a hard drive on our back end. The same way as that when you save a file on your computer and it saves to your hard drive, it gets broken up into pieces. And then, as the file is needed and it's needed opened up, it's pulled off of those different parts of the hard drive. And all you see is the operation of is the file opening up, but the data where it's stored it's pulling from multiple different areas. It's not like if you say take a file and put it into a filing cabinet. The best way to probably think about it is that the way we submit your data to our servers, and this again is all about making sure that it's fault tolerant and that there's no way of any data being lost or anything like that. The best way to probably think about it is if you were to take that file, okay, you were to take a file and you're going to a filing cabinet, traditionally you just drop that file into a filing cabinet and it would be there. What we do is we break that file up into a couple of different pieces and we store it in multiple different filing cabinets. And the intention there is that, should anything happen to one particular cabinet, we can still restore the file. It's all just around the way we do our backup process and storage process to ensure that it's fault tolerant and there's no chance of us losing any data. It's slightly another topic, Brad, but I hope I was able to give you some light on the process. So yeah, so that would be that's true, Brad. That is a limitation in terms of resource. So Brad's question is in relation to some of their restores that they've been having, where they're just trying to restore just the files that have changed from say 3 days ago. There isn't currently there is no functionality where we can actually just identify which files have changed and restore those. Unfortunately, you would have to go in and restore all the files from 3 days ago and then identify, or unless you knew yourselves which files had changed. There is no functionality currently in the restore process whereby you can go in and choose those files that have changed. And yeah, if you do have requests, if you think, and I think you have a very good enhancement request there. We do have on our community. In our community, if you haven't been there before, it's support or that's community.mozy.com. You can get there as well if you go to support.mozy.com. We do have a feature request option there where you can submit ideas for feature requests. But I do think you're onto a valid one there, Brad, and I think it would, I can see where you're coming from, being able to restore just the particular files that you want that have changed. It could be a good feature. Unfortunately, I don't I don't have control over it. I'll just have to train people after the fact that they make the changes. Great, I'm glad it was of some help, Brad. And hopefully you'll start seeing as well as with a lot of this version consolidation is that any excessive times that you've had for restores, especially large restores, this should hopefully as well reduce that time by having less restore points. So if there are any more questions, please do feel free. We still have a couple of minutes left. And just for those who don't have any questions and you're happy with how the session went and you need to get back to your day, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I know it's time out of your day, and I'm very conscious of that, so I really appreciate the time that you give me. I will be sending out the recording of today's session with an email once it's hosted on our website, on our support website, and I'll also, to Jared's question around the version of the software, I will also be posting the version as well in that email. So yeah, I suppose why wouldn't everybody go to 7 years? Different, I suppose it depends on what you need. I mean, the reasoning we go from having a minimum of 7 days up to a maximum of 7 years is because there are some users who need scenarios where maybe because of local regulations they can only keep data for 7 days or 10 days, and not everybody needs data back that far into 7 years. So I suppose it's a very much, and that's probably a reasoning why we're not enforcing that. It's giving the option of the administrator depending on the needs for their account. You're very welcome, Steve. Thank you for joining us today. No, my pleasure, Brad. Thank you for joining us. So if there are no more questions, thank you very much again for your time. I will be remaining here for another 2 or 3 or another few minutes just to see if there are any other questions come in. If you think of a question after today, if you're thinking about this, I know there was a lot of information thrown at you there, and the malfunction with the software, probably the user malfunction rather than the software, but we'll blame the software. If you do think of questions after fact, you have my email address, and I will be I'll be happy to take any questions on today's topic there as well. If it needs it, then as well, I can open up a support case if it should need it for any particular specific issues that you may be having. Brad, that is something. So I do not know. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I do not know if those advisory committees are still being held. But what I will do, I will find out for you. I will ask the question, and I will email you. Okay, great. If you have any further details on when these were held, or when was the last time you attended one, um, or if you know by any chance who actually held the session, if you could send that information to me, it would be a great benefit as well, for me to try and find out on that. Great. Thank you very much, Brad.